Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today and joining our session on AI, robotics and autonomous systems. And today's session is around the case for Agri-Robotics. The time is now. My name is Wendy Hewitson and I'm the Agritech Programme Manager for Barclays Eagle Labs. So I need to do a mandatory disclaimer in relation to all of our events that we are showcasing. So today we have asked Dr. Jenna Ross from CHAP and Sam Watson-Jones from the Small Robot Company to join us today to provide some tips and tricks around AI, robotics and automation within agriculture. The topics discussed are an overview of the options for you to think about and to help you alongside your independent research and business decisions. So these are not intended as recommendations or advice. Please also remember as well that your business has its own individual circumstances, so the statements and views expressed may not be applicable to yourself or suitable for your business. So that's great. So what are we here to talk about? I'm going to give you a quick overview of what Barclays Eagle Labs are and what our three mission statements are. So Barclays Eagle Labs is part of the UK's largest business incubator network. We've 25 Eagle Labs throughout the country. And what we aim to do is look at accelerating and scaling up UK businesses, be that through connecting Agritech startups to research and development expertise, to farmers, or throughout the supply chain. We also aim to have collaborative innovation, where we stimulate innovation and collaboration across the food supply chain. And then today, like all of our events, is focused around Industry 4.0. where we aim to demystify for us, for the farming clientele, for the trusted advisors, and from the technical experts, what Industry 4.0 is. And we aim that to be the voice of the farmer for the industry. So our vision is simply to become the #1 bank for positive innovation within agriculture and to support the UK food supply chain to become the most sustainable ecosystem in the world through the demystification of technology and encouraging collaboration across the pan supply chain, quite literally feeding the world without wrecking the planet. So if you look at Agriculture 4.0, it's got a lot of different names. For me personally, it's purely a tool to support the farmer and not to replace the farmer. And it looks at key objectives such as increasing productivity, improving efficiencies, reacting to sustainability, and also that key one, making time savings. So our session today, as I say, is all around AI, robotics and automated systems. So why are we looking at robotics? The government has committed a £90 million investment supporting the idea that Agritech is a burgeoning market. This is through the Transforming Food Production Challenge and their industrial strategy. So we are proud to be exploring the use of robotics in this important sector, which employs almost 4 million people and is larger than the automotive, aerospace sectors combined. Agritech companies are already working closely with UK farmers, where we're using technology, particularly robotics and AI, to help create new innovative technologies that herald new future innovations. So this is truly an exciting time for the industry. And there is a growing recognition that significant challenges faced by global agriculture can represent unique opportunities for growth and investment and also commercial growth within the industry. There's a lot of reasons for the change in food production. Agri-food is the largest manufacturing sector in the UK. It supports a food chain that generates over £108 billion per annum, with 3.9 million employees in a truly international industry. And it is estimated that it exports £20 billion of UK manufactured goods. However, the global food chain is under pressure. This is from areas such as population growth, climate change, political pressures, which affect things such as migration, population drift from rural to urban region, and also the demographics of an ageing population. These are the challenges that are recognised in the UK industrial strategy. So for us, the uses of new technology, with areas such as the agricultural robotics market, is projected to grow from a US dollars perspective of 4.6 billion in 2020 to around 20.3 billion US dollars by 2025. So that is an expected growth of a compound annual growth rate of 34.5%. Quite an astounding fact, I believe. So what is the vision? So our vision is a new generation of smart, flexible, robust, compliant and interconnected robotic and automated systems, where they work seamlessly along their human co-workers on farms and in food factories. So to deliver this vision, there is a lot of research and innovation being done, and that includes the development of robotic platforms that are suited to agricultural environments and improve capabilities for sensing, perception, planning, coordination, manipulation, and the grasping and learning and adaptation between the robots with existing machinery. So human-robot collaboration has to adjust and showcase as well adaptation for health and safety and human interaction. Technology adaptation, what are we looking at? This is likely to occur in measured steps. Most farmers and food producers will need technologies that can be introduced gradually alongside and with their existing systems. There will be a gradual transition period in which humans and robots work together as first simple and then more complex parts of the works are conducted by robots, driving productivity and efficiencies and enabling the human jobs to move further up the value chain. So what are some of the new technologies and techniques that are being developed? So there's areas such as harvest management, field farming, which includes crop monitoring, plant counting, and crop scouting. It also covers dairy and livestock management, plus livestock managing and precision fish farming, soil management, such as moisture monitoring and nutrient monitoring, irrigation management, weather tracking and total monitoring, inventory management, plus also COVID-19's impact on various applications has been looking at the use of agricultural robots. So that's just giving you a general overview of why AI, agri-robotics and autonomous systems are so important for us to share and investigate going further in the agricultural system. So as I said, today's session is all around the case for agri-robotics. Where are we now? And I've been really lucky to have been joined by Dr. Jenna Ross, who is the International Business Development for CHAP. And hers is the first presentation today, where she's going to talk around SlugBot. So I'm going to hand over now to Jenna. Jenna, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Jenna. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you very much.
No problem. So I'm really, really excited to hear all about the molluscs and the slugs and SlugBot. So I'm going to hand over to you now, Jenna. Take it away.
Perfect. Great. Thanks very much, Wendy. And thanks very much for asking me to speak today. The aim of today's presentation is really to give an overview of SlugBot, which is our new project, which is a collaborative research project between Crop Health and Protection, the Agritech Centre, which is known as CHAP, as well as small robot company Cosmonio, and farming enterprise AV&N Lee. So just to start by giving you a bit of an introduction to myself, my name is Jenna Ross. I'm a farmer's daughter from Aberdeenshire, and I did a PhD focused on the biological control of slugs from the University of Aberdeen. And then over the last 10 years, I've spent time working on international projects focused on molluscs and biocontrol. Then in 2018, I embarked on a Nuffield farming scholarship where I spent 26 weeks traveling the world looking at the future of slug control. And then since returning to the UK, I've taken up a position with the UK Agritech Centre, Crop Health and Protection, and which is known as CHAP, and it's one of 4 UK Agritech centres funded by Innovate, and they're very much a unique collaboration between government, academia and industry to help drive efficiency, resilience and wealth across the agri-food sector. So to look at CHAP's national network, we're very much made up of 4 non-delivery partners, including Bayer Crop Science, ADAS, Tesco and Frontier, as well as 11 delivery partners. And this includes Liberty Produce, the University of Warwick, James Hutton Institute, Cranfield University, Wright, AHDB, Rothamsted Research, Stockbridge Technology Centre, Ferra, Cabby and Newcastle University. And you can see from the map on the left-hand side that our capabilities and partners are spread right across the UK. Now, our in-house scientific capabilities and expertise spans an array of different disciplines, including soil health, fine phenotyping, vertical farming, molecular diagnostics, crop storage, biopesticide development, and that's just to name a few. And we're leading on a number of research projects, but today I'm really going to focus on SlugBot. So to give you a bit of an introduction, there's an estimated 35,000 terrestrial species of gastropod molluscs in the world, and they are one of the most successful and diverse animal groups in the terrestrial ecosystem. And they're important pests worldwide. Now, slugs can cause both direct and indirect impact. When we speak about direct impact, we're speaking about crop damage. And here we have an example of a canola field or an oilseed rape field in the Western Cape province of South Africa, which has been completely wiped out by slug damage. In this next image, we can see a corn crop in Canada that's being annihilated by the greyfield slug, Diagnostic reticulatum. In these images here on the left, we can see beans in Brazil that are being damaged by slugs. And then on the right, we can see a truffle that's been hollowed out by slugs, causing significant economic damage, and this is occurring in Australia. And in this final image, we can see an example of slugs damaging kale in Kenya. And really what I'm trying to get to here is that slugs really are a global economic problem. Now, they don't just cause direct economic impact, they can also have a non-direct impact. And a good example of this is with regards to human health. Now, slugs, semi-slugs, and snails can all act as carriers or intermediate hosts for different human parasites, such as the rat lungworm. And if this is contracted by humans, it can lead to non-recoverable meningitis. So current methods for controlling slugs in the UK are very much focused on chemical molluscicide pellets, either containing metaldehyde or ferric phosphate. But there has been significant controversy over metaldehyde in the UK, and this is due to its impact on non-target organisms as well as water systems. In fact, in 2018, there was a decision to ban metaldehyde in the UK due to this over-reliance and due to its impact on non-target organisms. This was later overruled due to a legal technicality, but certainly the future of metaldehyde still remains very much uncertain, and this really was a driving factor for doing enough field farming scholarship. Now, nematode biomolluscicides are also available. However, to date, these are not economical for use in arable and oilseed rape systems. They're very much targeted towards high-value crops. During my Nuffield scholarship, as I mentioned, I spent 26 weeks traveling the world, meeting researchers, scientists, agronomists, industry, farmers, really getting to grips with where we are right now with slug control. I was also looking at things like slug invasions, economic impact, but really at the heart of all of this was around the future of slug control and the future of monitoring systems. And to just very briefly summarize my findings, the easiest way to do this is by visualizing this as part of the integrated pest management slug pyramid. And this is really encouraging farmers to start at that basal level by looking at agronomic practices and cultural control, then working up through to monitoring, looking at threshold levels per crop, record keeping and forecasting, and then up to physical barriers, so how we can physically stop slugs from entering the field. Looking at things then like biological control, so how we can use one living organism to control another living organism. Then up to biorational control, and here we're speaking about things such as plant extracts, such as spearmint oil, and finally chemical control, which is at the top of that pyramid, and here we're speaking about the likes of the metaldehyde and the ferric phosphates. And my Nuffield report has a number of recommendations, and these include things such as increasing the integration of these components within the IPM pyramid, also pushing for more of a technology-based solution approach, looking at how we can reduce the amount of chemical molluscicides we're using, especially around metaldehyde and the fact that it does have impacts on the environment and on targets, and also how we can make biologicals more cost-effective, especially for arable and oilseed rape-based systems. So taking all these factors into account, this really led to the birth of SlugBot. This is an Innovate-funded project that was funded through the SMART Call, and it's a feasibility study to develop an innovative game-changing technology for autonomous slug monitoring and precision biomolluscicide treatment system. The project is being led by CHAP, but with input from a small robot company with regards to delivering the expertise in the robotics, mechanical and electrical engineering. It involves Cosmonio with the assistance around artificial intelligence and machine learning. And it also includes James Lee of AV&N Lee, who's providing the land for field trials, he's providing farmer input and also helping with demonstrations and dissemination. So the project itself has 3 main phases, with phase 1 looking at developing the artificial intelligence slug detection capability, especially using multispectral imagery. And this is very much utilising the CHAP fine phenotyping lab, which we have housed at Rothamsted Research. And here we have cutting-edge imaging equipment, including our videometer lab, which you can see down in the bottom left-hand photo. The videometer can look at 19 different wavelengths, from UV through to near-infrared and fluorescence. It can be used to distinguish and quantify features not necessarily seen with the naked eye, and it can also produce a unique spectral signature for specific pests. And then we can take that data out into the field settings using our Xenier cameras, which you can see there on the bottom right. We're also using our controlled environmental chambers for slug assays, and this particular process is being managed by Dr. Tom Ashfield. Also on the project, we're utilising the CHAP Molecular Diagnostics Laboratory around sequencing using our Illumina MySeq as well as our pyrosequencer, and also using other bits of kit such as our high-resolution capillary electrophoresis. And really here what we're trying to do is use our molecular data to help support the morphological data that we're seeing in the fine phenotyping laboratory, and also with any dissections that we do. Phase 2 of the project is around translating those findings from the lab out into the field, using small robot companies Tom Robot, firstly in the glasshouse settings, and then doing this in field settings by spring 2021. And then finally, phase 3 of this project is around developing the precision spraying and delivery of this in field, and we're aiming for this by autumn 2021. If anyone would like to learn more about this project, my email address is available here, and you can also follow our progress via our various social media channels, which you can find here up in the top left-hand corner. But from my perspective, it's been great to see my Nuffield project and my Nuffield vision translate to a potential solution for the sector. And this is an exciting project that we're all very proud of. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jenna. Who was to know there was 35,000 species of molluscs throughout the world? I wonder if you got to see all of those in your 26 weeks when you were traveling around?
Not quite.
Not quite, but no, that was really, really informative. And I think that does nicely carry on onto what we've got Sam Watson-Jones speaking about. So Sam Watson-Jones is the co-founder of the Small Robot Company, and he's kindly agreed to join us today to talk about per plant farming. So hi Sam, how are you doing today?
Hi Wendy, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. It's really, really interesting. So I'm going to hand it over to you and let you go through your presentation, and then we'll all come back together, as I've had a few questions emailed in around what we're talking about today.
Great. Well, thanks Wendy. Thanks for the opportunity, and thank you Jenna as well. Great presentation, and we've been really lucky to come into contact with someone as knowledgeable and as expert as Jenna is, which is really helping to accelerate the work that we're doing. What we see this whole thing fitting into is this concept that we're calling per plant farming. So this, you've seen an example there of trying to do things in a really accurate way when it comes to pest control. We really use per plant farming as shorthand for taking farming in the fourth agricultural revolution to a much more accurate, precise way of doing things. So individually treating plants, yes, of course, but also getting much more accurate with the way that we monitor and understand and interact with our soil. So rather than basing a soil sample for a field on a few hundred samples, basing it on a few 100,000 samples, and trying to get a measurement of the soil from every square meter of our soil. And then when we're talking about pests, we're also talking about doing this in as accurate a way as we possibly can. So ultimately individually targeting pests, understanding exactly where they are, and doing things in real detail. For me, the starting point for me is that I come from a farming background, and I went back to the family farm, which is an arable farm in Shropshire, in 2011, and I was looking at precision farming, and it was what I would later come to term third agricultural revolution precision farming, and it was things like variable rate spraying or variable rate drilling or better ways of mapping the soil. And ultimately, as I looked at it, I just wasn't convinced that it was moving farming forward enough, that it was going to move the industry forward enough, and that it was going to move my farm forward enough. And so towards the end of 2016, early 2017, I met someone who would later become my co-founder, a guy called Ben Scott Robinson. And together we spent 6 months talking to farmers in the early part of 2017, spoke to 100 farmers in that time, asked them what were the problems that they were facing on their farm, and from that formulated this proposition, which is all about per plant farming. And we believe that this method of farming is going to become the dominant agricultural system in the world by over the next 20 years. And that means that any farm anywhere in the world will have the capability to monitor and manage their crops on a per plant basis, gathering data on an individual plant, using artificial intelligence to make predictions about what the future looks like for that individual plant, and then ultimately taking action at that same per plant level. We think there are a whole range of benefits to this, but the first one I wanted to focus on was actually around the increase in yields, and we'll come to that. We'll come to that shortly. But really, this is not something that we dreamed up. Ben and I dreamed up, and we're just trying to bring it into reality. We are trying to catch a wave that we think is happening around the world, and we are right at the start of this transition from the third to the fourth agricultural revolution. And Wendy at the top outlined some of the ways that Barclays are seeing that moving, and we would agree with all of those comments. I think to be slightly more precise, it's going to be the move from having farm machinery getting heavier and heavier, and therefore an increase in the intensity and the frequency of cultivation, towards a system where we have much more lightweight machines, and Wendy alluded to this in her intro. And actually, we're gonna see farming move away from cultivation, where we are using really minimal cultivation or no cultivation at all. And you're already seeing this in things like the no-till movement, in regenerative agriculture. But the bit that is missing, I think, is actually, how does technology get used to accelerate that? How does technology get used to accelerate the best of human innovation and scale it over millions of acres? We're going to move from making decisions on a field by field basis, and therefore, this field needs herbicide, this field needs fertilizer, to the per plant intelligence that I mentioned at the start, to a really, really precise way of treating things. And we're going to move from a system where we are constantly draining our nutrients, and part of this is because we have an industrialized agricultural system based around monocultures, to ultimately, as part of the fourth agricultural revolution, it's going to be possible to move away from monocultures, to replicate something much closer to a natural environment. When you have per plant data and per plant action, ultimately you will see biodiversity being brought back into the field. And this is going to be a farming system where you have a blend of different root types, which is going to encourage different species to live in the soil. You're going to find that nutrients are going to be cycled more frequently between plants. And rather than a system where we exhaust the soil of all of its nutrients in one go, and therefore, of course, we have to replace it with synthetic fertilizer. We're going to try and replicate what happens in the natural environment much more, but use technology to accelerate that transition. And so ultimately, as Wendy said, this is moving towards a much more sustainable farming model. But to get into some of the specific benefits, there are lots, but just to highlight one, I think the first thing that I would point out on this chart on the right-hand side is these 30 years here, which is where from 1990, which is roughly when precision farming in its current form became mainstream, to 2020. For most of the global food crops in the world, precision farming has had no recognizable yield impact. In fact, precision farming was almost the point at which those impacts stopped working. If you went back the previous 70 or 80 years, you'd see a big uplift in yield around the world as mechanization and industrial chemicals came in. But at a certain point, it stopped working. Precision farming has done nothing to alleviate that. It also offers, a fairly poor return on investment for farmers, and many farmers that I speak to really struggle to articulate the benefit to all of these incremental changes that we're seeing in farming. But where we were inspired by the potential for per-plant farming was actually looking at research institutes like CHAP and Rothamsted and some of the ones that Jenna listed on her presentation, and also at seed breeding programs where they are managing a very small number of plants, or a relatively small number of plants, but managing them in a really detailed way. And when they're taking a decision, they are making truly data-driven decisions. And when they're taking action, they're doing it in a really accurate, detailed way. They're minimizing waste and then maximizing uptake so that the plants, can be as productive as possible. And in that scenario, in those micro trial plots, they are achieving tonnages of 20 tons per hectare. And we know that the UK commercial average, and I'm talking about wheat here, just as an example, but the UK commercial average is 8.5 tons per hectare. So the gap there is not biological. It's not because the plant isn't capable of it. It's because we have a farming system that in some way restricts the performance potential of our plants. And you can't scale what is happening in those research institutes with human beings because it's just too expensive. But you could scale that approach with robotics and artificial intelligence. And that's what we're suggesting. And then over here on the right-hand side, that gap, so I've taken the example of wheat, but that gap exists in all of the crops that I've been able to find so far. But certainly the top 3 global food crops, which are wheat, rice, and corn, and collectively, astoundingly, those 3 crops account for 60% of human calorie intake globally every year. If you took the gap between commercial average and what has been achieved on trial plots for each of those crops, and you computed that out around the total annual production, there is a loss there, or there is a missed opportunity of $1 trillion every year that we don't capture and that we don't produce, and we think that robotics and artificial intelligence are the solution that are going to help us capture some of that gain. Because of course, in the background to this, we know that we need to produce 70% more food over the next 30 years, up to 2050, to feed a growing global population, but also that we need to do that from the same amount of farmland as we have today, probably even slightly less as urbanization increases. And whereas previous generations have always been able to deal with the increase in productivity from food that is required for growing populations by increasing the amount of land that they farm, and also through the Green Revolution and everything that happened through the 60s and 70s. Future generations are not going to be able to use those same levers, and so they're going to have to rely on new technologies to deliver some of those gains. At the moment, farmers are forced to compromise in whatever farming approach they take. the three things that all farmers are trying to balance when they take a decision on their farm is yield, profit, and the environment. How do they make a decision that optimizes or gets as close to optimizing all of those as they can? Well, the reality is that it's pretty much impossible. And every farming system that a farmer takes is consciously or unconsciously compromising. And most farmers are losing money whilst they do this. But a couple of examples. I picked out the example of the Research Institute, which is actually getting that balance between yield, really good yields, and a small environmental impact. But of course, it's not profitable because you have to staff it with lots of people. Down at the bottom here, regenerative agriculture, I think, is a really interesting model for the future of farming, where we actually develop something that regenerates the soil year on year and tries to bring biodiversity back into our farms. Now, for the individual farmer, this is a good system because it enables a farmer to make a profit. They're reducing their inputs a lot, and it also gives them a good result in terms of interacting with the environment. But there is a sacrifice on yield, and so this is where, as I was saying before, we see robotics and artificial intelligence coming in, actually taking the best of things like regenerative agriculture and approaches like that, but making them much more productive, using the land to be much more productive, but not doing it in an intense way. To echo what Wendy said at the top, it is about feeding the world without killing the planet. And so we, at Small Robot Company, have tried really hard to place farmers at the center of everything that we do to deliver this farming system without compromise. We are not, Ben and I are not engineers who've created something and then gone looking for a problem to solve. We're people who've tried really hard to understand what the problems are and then hired engineers to build the things that answer those problems. And this is the sort of stuff that we've started to build. We're building a service of small, precise robots, and we call these robots Tom, Dick, and Harry. And we are building these robots to deliver services for the world's biggest food crops. Our first target crop is wheat, and we're trying to do these things to develop this farming system without compromise, as I said. Each of the robots has a different function. Jenna's mentioned the Tom robot, and Tom robot is like a bundle of sensors. He's a per plant mapping and monitoring robot. Also picking up disease and pest data, as we were talking about, and this is one of the reasons we're really excited to be part of this project, because it's going to accelerate that aspect of our work. And we're also this year developing a soil monitoring capability for Tom too, so that we can, as we're covering the ground and gathering data on plants, and this data at the moment is visual imagery principally. We're also going to be sampling the soil as we go, so that we can get a much more detailed map of our soil and a much more detailed understanding of what is actually going on there. And we think that this is really exciting for the soil science community, because better data is going to lead to a real acceleration in our understanding of what's happening with soil science. This data is then gathered and sent to an AI-driven platform that we call Wilma. I'll explain a little bit more about Wilma shortly. But then it's sent out in instructions to Dick and Harry. So whereas Tom is the data robot, Dick and Harry are the action robots, if you like. And so what Dick is focusing on first of all is weed control. But part of this project is accelerating the pest and initially the pest control aspect of what we're doing through developing this micro spraying technology. And then Harry is a planting robot. So whilst Dick is all about cost saving, if you like, for the farmer, so it's about reducing the number of inputs that you need to use to get control on your farm. Harry is really the point at which we're going to try and drive up yields. So this is happening in a couple of ways. So this is about improving the yield on the headland. First of all, we know that we can see a reduction of 15 to 20% of yield on our headlands due to increased compaction, just basically heavy machinery squashing the life out of the soil. A lightweight drill will really alleviate some of that. and also becoming a much more intelligent drill. So taking some of that best practice, one really easy example is in a research institute, the seed rates that they use per hectare are massively lower than what we use in a commercial environment. So can we capture some of that and start to really use that that sort of approach at a commercial scale? To go into a little bit more detail on each of these aspects, Wilma's the boss. We decided very early on that it was very important to have a woman in charge, and it's steered us right so far. And she is gathering data, she is analysing it. What you're seeing on the right-hand side here is the image recognition that we've partnered with Cosmonio to achieve, where we're recognising individual weeds in a densely populated field of wheat. And that's significant because then what we'll do in time is classify those weeds. And then when we move on to how we're going to kill weeds with Dick, we can actually, the farmer can dial up or dial down their risk tolerance. So say this weed needs to be killed, but this weed actually, because the artificial intelligence is informing us, has a ecological benefit of some sort. Maybe it's providing a food source for invertebrates, and we can start to take the way that we control weeds to a completely different level to anything that's possible at the moment, because a herbicide obviously can't differentiate. But really, Wilma is our data analysis and advice engine. It's available now. We've built a really strong, robust architecture behind this piece of software so that we can scale it quite quickly. Tom, as we've mentioned, we talked about, Tom is the scanning, monitoring robot. We're working with a company called Tharsis, who built all of the Ocado robots to manufacture the first versions of our Tom, which will be at a completely different level to the prototype that you see on your screen here. And Tom is covering 20 hectares a day now, and he's going to be a manufactured, robust robot. And that next version of Tom is going to be available in October, and we'll be offering our first commercial services to farmers in the south of England with a weed mapping service. So Tom will go out, scan the field, and give the farmers a really accurate map of exactly where their weeds are. In the first instance, that's going to be fed into their sprayers so that they can use their variable rate technology to spray those fields more efficiently. But ultimately, of course, what we want is to be able to kill those weeds individually, and to do this without using any chemicals. So we've partnered with another company called Rootwave here to deliver a non-chemical weeding system. We've had about 12 months of trials of this so far. From October of this year, we're going to be doing some more extended field trials and really starting to speed up the pace with which this machine can work. And then Dick is going to be commercially available from October 21. And what we're really trying to do here is move farmers towards a post-glyphosate, but more widely a post-herbicide world, because we know that there is lots of political pressure pointing us in that direction, and it's probably something that we need to do as an industry anyway. But also, we're seeing a massive increase in herbicide resistance. There's now over 500 unique cases of herbicide resistance around the world, whereas in 1970 there were 0. We used a herbicide and it worked. Whatever that is, 50 years on, it's not the case. Herbicides have really stopped working in many cases, and UK wheat farmers have really experienced this, particularly around blackgrass. So we're going to have blackgrass and all grass weed detection capability available by next October. And we're going to be delivering this as a commercial service for our first farmers. And then Harry, as I mentioned, is a year behind. So Harry is just really starting development now, and he's about scaling what is great about regenerative farming, a no-till, autonomous, lightweight drilling robot. To give you an idea, Harry's going to weigh somewhere between 120 to 150 kilos. Versus, and that's unladen with seed, versus 40 tons for a large tractor and drill these days. So the amount of weight that is going to go into the field is going to be significantly less. We're going to be doing things in a much more accurate way. And then just finally to mention about how we sell this to farmers. The primary route is through what we're calling farming as a service. So this is contracts with farmers where they pay on a pay-as-you-go basis, essentially. So they don't have to buy a robot from us. They lease the robot out on a per hectare basis, and this enables them to try it out more quickly. They try us out on 10-20% of their land to start with. And we've got a whole load of early adopters lined up, ready to go. And we're seeing, again, to use the same phrase, but we're seeing that people who are adopting a no-till approach or a regenerative approach really are early adopters. The secondary way that this has a significance, I think, is as a hardware platform. So we talked about being the platform that enables the root wave technology to work on a robot. I think the fourth agricultural revolution, indeed the world today, is full of sensor technology and really exciting things that are being developed in universities or spin-offs out of engineering programs where people are developing amazing capabilities. But unfortunately, most of them are being deployed either on a tractor or in handheld devices. And neither of those are ideal deployment platforms. An autonomous robot is a much better way of deploying those sensors at scale. And so really that's the way that there's a lot of growth potential there, and there's a lot of growth potential for those businesses too. And then the third way is through specialist contracts. So this is, our core focus is on delivering this farming as a service model for the world's biggest food crops, as we've talked about. But of course, there will be opportunities along the way to do weeding contracts in specialist crops or mapping contracts for other crops. So there are different ways that we're looking at this. And that's probably enough of me talking. I haven't actually put my email on there, Jenna. You reminded me that I should have done, but it's just sam@smallrobotcompany.com. So if you have any feedback, you want to get in touch, you're a farmer or whatever, please do.
Thank you very much, Sam. That was really interesting. And yes, it is a bit like the Great Escape with Tom, Dick and Harry for the future of agriculture. I do like that, but I also like the fact Wilma is the brains behind the operation. So absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I think you'll agree from both of those talks there's definitely endless opportunities, and there's lots of work being done in this area to support the future of agriculture. And as both Sam and I said, it's all around supporting a sustainable ecosystem without wrecking the planet. So as I said earlier, we have had a few questions emailed in today. And one of them, is one I get asked an awful lot, so I'm sure you guys will be as well. Like yourself, Sam, and like yourself, Jenna, I'm from a farming background. So one of the key questions that we always get asked is, things that resonate with the farming community is, what does it cost? Can I trust it? Can I trust you? And what are the results of the return on investment that I'm going to see from what you're doing? So in relation to those areas, probably how long is it, or how long do you believe it will be before that proof of concept and that innovation within the technology can actually match those three key areas? So I think if we go to Jenna first, and then we'll link back to yourself, Sam.
Okay, great. Well, certainly the overall objective here is to develop a service offering that is attractive and is financially attractive to farmers. But to go a step beyond that, really one of the core objectives here is to test to see whether or not we can make biologicals financially viable. Right now they very much are targeted towards high value crops. And if we can apply them in a precision approach, does that mean that they can suddenly become accessible to arable crops and oilseed rape? So that's, I think, really important, especially as we're losing metaldehyde, or certainly around uncertainty of the future of metaldehyde. And with regards to trust, as a farmer's daughter, I know myself the importance of gaining trust, especially when developing new products and getting that adoption. So it was really important for me to have a farmer involved in this project right from the get-go. And Sam has mentioned himself the importance it is for small robots to have that farmer-led research. So I think to have a farmer on board, to have that level of co-innovation right from the beginning of the project, it breaks barriers and I think is going to be really important with regards to adoption, with regards to engagement, and also dissemination of our results. And from us, with regards to the outputs of the project, it's really about, one, can we map slugs in the field? And two, can we precision apply biologicals to control slugs? And really our aim is to get a proof of concept prototype by the end of this project, so really the end of 2021.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I would just to chip in. I mean, I think I completely agree with what Jenna says, that the sort of the huge global opportunity here for the work that's going on around SlugBot is, it's just vast, and so we have to have that in mind as we go towards this. And it's difficult. It's a difficult concept for many farmers to get that. There isn't just a thing that you can bundle up and use tomorrow that's going to be perfect and it's going to be 10 times cheaper. But of course, that is where you want to get to with all of these technologies. And I said right at the start, one of the things that is frustrating about precision farming at the moment is that everything is focused on incremental tweaks. This is going to improve your yields by 2%. It's going to improve your efficiency by 3%. And my farm doesn't, and many of the farmers that I've spoken to, we don't have a 2 or 3% problem. It's much more significant than that, which is why we have to have these bold projects like the one that Jenna is leading, where there's stuff that needs to be proved here, but the opportunity is such around moving away from chemicals, and also doing this autonomously, of course, that it's just that we have to go for it. I think if I was to make a wider comment on trust and cost of these systems more broadly, the approach that we're taking is that when we initially go to market, we try and have a cost that roughly matches what it costs the farmer today. So, for example, the non-chemical weeding robot that we're marketing will cost roughly £150 a hectare for the control of grass weeds and broadleaf weeds. Now we know that for many farmers spend more than that actually, but that and we've worked very closely with the group of 20 farmers that we've got that we call our farmer advisory group to work out what the right cost is. And so you start there, but of course, as the service improves, as the level of autonomy increases, the cost of delivering that service reduces, and so the cost to the farmer ultimately reduces as well. And then in terms of trust, this is one of the reasons that we've gone for this farming as a service model, because the farmer tries this out, as I said, on 10% or 20% of their land to start with. They don't sell an existing machine in order to get involved with our robots. They don't have to spend 150k on buying a robot. They don't have to be experts in robotics or artificial intelligence. They try it out, and if it works, that's great. Then the following year they expand their coverage with us. But the trust is something that only builds up over time. And although lots of things will change in farming, I think one thing that won't is that farming will always be a relationship business. And so for whatever new technologies are coming in, building that trust with the farmer, building that relationship with the farmer, going into it thinking that this is going to be a 10, 15, 20-year relationship with that farmer is really key, and will be the case, as it has been for generations previously. That bit will remain the same even when this new technology comes in.
That's great. As you say, farmers have long memories. So yeah, we've got to be careful what we do and what we say. Going on from that, realistically then, so who do you see is going to be those key influencers or the enablers to bring this technology together? And how is that going to be, or how is it key to get that disseminated across that food supply chain? Who wants to go on that one?
Well, I would just comment that all three of us are from a farming background, and I think that's where it comes from, because there's a really interesting chart that's been doing the rounds on Twitter, which shows it's actually a Canadian chart, and it shows the percentage of the income that's come to farmers versus the overall gross output of farms. And so it shows over I think it takes it from 1920 through to today, so it's the last 100 years. And what it shows is that the gross output of farms has increased massively over that 100 years, but actually the percentage that goes to farmers has reduced really significantly over that time. And that's because more and more is going to seed companies, chemical companies, machinery manufacturers, etc. And so the problem is that there is, whilst there are great people within those businesses, there isn't really a huge impetus to change from within those businesses. There isn't they're not running around screaming, going, right, we've got to go from the third agricultural revolution to the fourth agricultural revolution. But farmers do understand that urgency much more. They understand that they've got to do things to protect the environment. Everyone wants to leave their farm in better shape than they inherited it. They understand that most farms are losing money from the core activity of producing food. Most farms are not profitable from that. That people are surviving by diversifying. Subsidies still have a big role to play, particularly in Europe. But I think these are innovations that need to be driven by farmers, which is why, as I said, it's great that Jenna's driving this innovation from a farming background at CHAP. I'm trying to drive this innovation from a farming background at a small robot company, and we're both trying to place farmers right at the center of everything that we're doing, and have farmer problems as the core thing that we're trying to solve.
Have you anything to add to that, Jenna?
I was just going to say the only thing I would add to that is certainly with the Slugbot project, having someone like James Lee, who's our farmer on board in this project, has been really valuable, not just from his social media following, so getting information out there that way, but he also came to us from an HDB monitor farm background, so he's already familiar with that process of exploitation and dissemination and getting that adoption, and also understands the value of peer-to-peer learning as well. And I think that's really valuable, and it's going to bring a lot of value to this project.
That's really interesting. And as you say, I think we all agree that, what is coming with Agritech, whatever shape or form it takes, it is that tool to support, not to replace the farmer. And we've all talked about productivity, efficiencies, sustainability and time management. And as you say, this is going to be gradual. It's not going to happen overnight. So literally, probably just a quick one-liner from you both. What do you see as the next steps for the industry? Jenna, can I come to you first?
Well, one-liner, I think we have to bear in mind that I think metallohyde, the future of it is uncertain. So I think we have to be forward-thinking. We have to think about the integration of solutions. And I think if we can make biologicals cost-effective, I think that's a massive win for the industry, especially as we're losing so many chemical actives.
Great. And I would say commercial proof. There's been a lot of ideas kicking around for a long time. The concept that I've talked about here is not a brand new concept. This came out of work that was happening at Harper Adams and work that was happening at Lincoln and elsewhere in the world. But for the first time this October, we're going to have farmers using this stuff commercially. It's those innovators, that sort of first 2% of the farming community. It's the same with any group of people. There's sort of a 2% group that are the innovators. They will test it commercially. They will prove that it works. They'll talk to their mates about it down at the pub, and then the spread will happen from there. But commercial proof is the next step. The R&D is great. It's brought us a long way as an industry. The next couple of years, it's going to be all about proving it.
Great. So I think I'll bring you both back in 12 to 18 months then and see how we've got on. Because I'm sure the people at home like myself have absolutely loved this session. So I really can't thank you enough, Sam, and yourself, Jenna, for joining myself today and the people listening in at home. If there is any questions, please do. On your original invite, there was an email address, which is the Agritech Eagle Labs at barclays.com. So if you would like copies of the presentation or to get in touch with either of the speakers, please do send an email through to that email address. Again, that's Agritech Eagle Labs at barclays.com. Just before I leave you and say thank you again, obviously, to Sam and Jenna, there will be a slide come up at the end, and that is your chance to give feedback on this event. There'll be a QR code and also, again, a link for you to put your feedback on there. What drives me, as I say, is my passion for the future of agriculture, but it's also ensuring that we get the feedback on what you've heard today, what you want to hear in the future, and that helps me deliver sessions like this or future sessions that are really key to you and hit what you want to understand around Agritech and the future of agriculture. So please, as I say, do take your time to fill out that feedback on there or email us. And once again, can I just say thank you very much, guys. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Jenna. I've loved this session. I'm not going to go and look for 35,000 species of molluscs when I go for my lunch today. But yes, and as I say, Tom, Dick and Harry and Wilma, let's take it away for the future. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy.